Today, we are going to discuss a very important topic, and that has to do with the Hindu traditional view as it relates to a woman's menstrual cycle. During a menstrual cycle, traditional practices restrict a woman from going to a temple. It is a long established Hindu tradition, still in vogue. Many individuals with a rational thinking and thought and mindset respect this tradition and follow it. By discussing this topic, my intention is not to take sides or pass a judgment. Instead, it is to stay true to the intent of this channel, where we take on topics, look at the scriptural and the traditional meaning of it, and then let you decide and let you make a judgment on it. I feel this is needed, particularly for the teenagers and the young adults of today who would want to understand the rationale behind some of these practices. So in that sense, when we talk about a woman's menstrual cycle and any restrictions of going to a temple, I think it's more important to understand how the traditional books looked at this biological phase of a menstrual cycle and not worry too much about the restriction of going to the temple. That's a judgment you can make. But my focus is on how did the tradition deal with this topic and an important biological phase in a woman's life. To begin with, it is important that the Gita or the Upanishad don't have a verdict on this. They're not imposing a guideline or anything like that. That's not the role of the Gita and the Upanishad. They are scriptures of reason, and that's their focus. So they don't give a verdict on this. A lot of the background on this topic of menstruation or the menstrual cycle comes actually from the Charaka Samhita and the Sushruta Samhita. To keep it simple, these are two ancillary books that are focused upon well-being, health, and mental and physical discipline. In fact, Ayurveda, that you might be very familiar with, owes its source to these two books of the Charaka Samhita and the Sushruta Samhita. I'm calling it books in a very loose manner. Essentially, it's really a bundle of very valuable literature that was written several thousands of years ago. Now, from an Upanishad and a Gita standpoint, there are no in days or out days. Contemplating, chanting, thinking about the divine, about the supreme, or on a personal God that you have put a name and form is 24/7. There's no in days or out days. It's not like you stop that contemplation for a certain time and then resume. It's always there. So this topic of menstrual period, or those 3 to 5 days, is a traditional practice. And let's go deeper into this. These traditional books or the Charaka Samhita and the Sushruta Samhita really looked at a woman's biological life as a continuum and in 3 phases: Bala, childhood; Rajaswala, the phase where the menstrual cycle starts; and then Rajo Nivritti, when the menstrual cycle pauses, as the 3rd phase. Rajo Nivritti. Rajaha means blood in all these aspects, by the way. Bala, Rajaswala, Rajo Nivritti. So it looked at it as a continuum, a biological life, as okay, it's going to these 3 phases. And they prescribed, these books prescribed a code of conduct, or we call it paricharya, particularly during this phase of Rajaswala, which is this menstrual cycle phase. They prescribed a code of conduct. And this code of conduct was prescribed for well-being and as a precursor for a woman who goes into a state of pregnancy, or garbhini, as it is called in Sanskrit, and even the next phase of it, which is postnatal or sutika in Sanskrit. So the well-being was linked to the well-being, the paricharya or the code of conduct was linked to the well-being during Rajaswala, Garbhini, and Sutika. If a woman were to go to a state of pregnancy, and then from there, a postnatal care. The whole reason for paying attention to this Rajaswala was the body was seen as a product of mental and physical well-being. And let's understand this a little bit better. Food energy, or ahara rasa, was seen as the fire that fires up or gives energy to the basic elements of this body, also called the dhatus. And then these dhatus help some secondary elements called the upadhatus, or secondary elements. So food energy fires up the dhatus and the upadhatus. The ahara rasa, or the food energy, along with the dhatu and the upadhatus, they work in tandem for the nourishment and the healthy blood formulation and circulation in a woman's body. This was considered critical during the Rajaswala phase. And it extended into the period of conception, leading to pregnancy, as I said, Garbhini, and even postnatal or Sutika. The attention to nourishment continued even in the third phase of menopause, or Rajo Nivritti, where the cessation of the menstrual cycle or the stoppage of that happens. Now, the traditional sages understood that the physical and the mental well-being relates directly to the mental state, or the manasika bhava, the emotions. And proper nourishment was needed so that you have the proper manasika bhava. And this paricharya that was given during this phase of Rajaswala focused on a few things that directly links to what Krishna was describing in the Gita, which is around diet restrictions. So during that menstrual cycle phase, the guidance was around diet restrictions, which is avoiding pungent foods, keeping the body calm and balanced so that the temperature is kept low of the body. That's why there were guidance saying on, hey, you probably should not have a head bath during a menstrual cycle, as an example. That was because to keep the body temperature balanced, particularly in hot climates. Sleep, following a consistent sleep cycle, not oversleeping. Again, something Krishna has been gave to us in chapter 17 as an example. Moods, staying cheerful, avoiding the negative and toxic energies, engaging with the right people. Again, something that Krishna prescribed to us in the Gita. Topical applications. In that menstrual cycle phase, avoiding too much of ornaments, getting contact with metals, and avoiding any kind of metallic reactions, any kind of chemical reactions, was something that was prescribed as part of this paricharya, or code of conduct. And lastly, physical exertion, making sure that a woman is giving the body enough rest during those 3 to 5 days of Rajaswala, or during that menstrual cycle phase. So a lot of the paricharya was focused on this. And they put this special emphasis, or these books put the special emphasis on the nourishment. And on completion of the 4 to 5 days of the menstrual cycle, this paricharya was a little bit relaxed. So if you can now put all of this together and look at it from a macro level, you would then come to the conclusion, hopefully, that the traditional practices, the focus, whether going to the temple or not, was not the primary focus. It was on the well-being of a woman going through her biological phase of Bala, Rajaswala, and Rajo Nivritti. That is where the focus was. It is not about limiting or the practice of spiritual contemplation. There was no in and out days from a spiritual aspect, from a divinistic aspect. Tradition, whether one has to go, not go, think about what I just described from a paricharya, and then respect the traditional practices of a place. That's your judgment call. That's for you to decide. I'm not the one to make that decision or take sides for that. Krishna, back because my focus is on divinity. My focus is on the Gita and the Upanishad and what the Gita and the Upanishad prescribe to us. But at the same time, I want to give you a view into some of the traditional practices and where it came from. And in this case of a Hindu traditional practice related to the menstrual cycle came from the Charaka Samhita and the Sushruta Samhita, which is more focused on the Paricharya. Hope that became clear through this video. I would like to close this with an amazing verse from the Gita that Krishna actually speaks in chapter 6, where it is Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam chamai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sachamena pranashyati. It's so beautiful. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra. The faith and the perception of the person that matters. It is the faith and the perception of the person that matters. For a person who sees me in all beings and sees all beings in me, I'm never out of that individual's vision, and that individual is never out of me. Back to the fact that there's no in days or out days, there's no moments where Krishna or the divine is out and in. Beautifully, this verse again captures it. I just love reading it again. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sachame na pranashyate. For a person who sees me in all beings and sees all beings in me, I'm never out of that individual's vision, and that individual is never out of mine. Me and mine here are the entire divinity here. It's not, again, an individual just with a name and form constrained by that. Hope this helps. I look forward to discussing more such topics with you in the subsequent videos.